We are in the unhealthiest congressional district in the country. There's no one here that doesn't support healthcare for all people.
CNN aired a segment that included rare praise of Bernie Sanders, and on top of that, also discussed how Sanders has, in fact, wide appeal across the country. So let me play a piece of this, and then I'm going to discuss it.
The Trillbilly Workers' Party is Tanya Turner, Terrence Ray, and Tom Sexton. Their popular leftist comedy podcast is recorded in a cabin in Whitesburg, a town of 2,000 in what, in the popular imagination, is rock-solid Trump country.
Do you think the Democratic Party speaks to the issues facing your community?
No, not at all. You could look at a lot of the failures of the Democratic Party, both in Kentucky, hyper-locally, but also across the country, to lead you to some of the support, of course, of conservatives and bizarre politics like Trump, what Trump has brought about. And because they've really just abandoned communities that used to support them.
They're not impressed by the candidates for president in 2020, except for Bernie Sanders.
Louisville, thank you!
Who only lost the 2016 Kentucky Democratic primary to Hillary Clinton by 0.5 percentage point.
You know what you're getting. This man has had the same vision for 40, 50 years and has absolutely moved the dialogue about what is possible in this country.
I could tell you this. My mother, who I wouldn't, I love her, but I wouldn't consider necessarily a sort of an exemplar of progressive thought, loves Bernie Sanders. She's a very overzealous Bernie person. She's a Pentecostal Sunday school teacher, so.
Healthcare is a human right. Medicare for all.
The Trillbillies believe Sanders is the only candidate who truly understands the struggles in communities like theirs, and trust he would work toward the fairer future they imagine.
We are in the unhealthiest congressional district in the country. There's no one here that doesn't support healthcare for all people. You would have to be a criminal, an absolute billionaire class sociopath to not want the sick and dying people around you in this community and in your family to not have access to quality health care, and very few people here do. That is one of the simplest nods I can give to why Bernie has support here.
All right, so this was a great segment. Full credit here to Ellie Reeve of CNN and the Trillbilly Workers' Party, a vitally important podcast. I've seen some of these hosts on Means TV before, so I've been sort of familiar, or at least I've heard of their work before. So, having a leftist podcast like this in the heart of Kentucky is incredibly important to being able to continue to grow this movement, not only just for Sanders, but in general, this movement that is dedicated to people and workers' rights. Now, for me, look, this entire segment, it was great, right? But the fact that it's treated as a surprise that Bernie Sanders has appeal in Trump country, I mean, it goes to show you just how co-opted the mainstream political narrative is by corporate interests and the wealthy. Because if you look at any data point, look at polling on Medicare for all, it's incredibly popular. You look at the states that Bernie Sanders won in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. I mean, let me name some of them off here. He won West Virginia, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Alaska. And so he beat Hillary in all those states and only lost to Hillary in Iowa, Missouri, and Kentucky by less than a percentage point. And all these states that Bernie Sanders won, Hillary lost to Trump in the general election. All the ones I listed off, Hillary lost those to Trump in the general election. Now, look, I'm under no illusions. I'm not going to pretend like that Bernie would have won every single one of those states. But, I mean, it would have been a lot closer. And at the very least, there would have been a movement of people on the ground that supported the Democratic nominee in Bernie Sanders, unlike with Hillary Clinton. So you have in Bernie Sanders, as was mentioned in the segment, somebody with a 40-year record of fighting for people, of saying the same thing. People know what he's about. Even if you don't agree with Bernie on everything, you know he's an honest man. You know he has fought for people his entire career. If you just go back and watch some old videos of him in the 80s and 90s, I mean, you know he's been on the same. He's been making the same points and been in the same fight since he's been in politics. So this is part of the reason. And you add this, you add Bernie's history, you add his fight for issues like Medicare for all, you add all of this up and you put it into a candidate who has been a lifelong independent, somebody who has called out the establishment in both parties, in addition to the corporate establishment and the media establishment. That appeals to people because you have somebody here who is a fighter, not just for people, but a fighter for the people against the powerful. And he has waged this fight, again, his entire career. And being a lifelong independent shows you that he is not attached to either party. That is incredibly appealing to voters that have been disillusioned by the system. So this is why I think clearly Bernie is the best candidate to go up against Donald Trump or any Republican in a general election, because Bernie has this 40-year record. So, look, we shouldn't need a CNN segment to tell us that Bernie Sanders is appealing to poor and middle income people that support Medicare for all. But we do need a segment like this because of how co-opted the mainstream narrative has been by corporate interests and the and the wealthy. So again, it's vitally important to have and support podcasts like the Trillbilly Workers Party. And when you see segments like this, look, I'll link to the CNN segment below the video. Click on it. Hit like. I mean, you go on that video right now. I forget what it's at, but it has hundreds of thousands of views. It has a ton of likes. Videos like this explode because they are incredibly popular because they actually speak to people. So again, go watch that video, like it, and share it around.